morning. First, I want to thank the organizers of DevOpsDays Boston for organizing this event and all the sponsors. And thank you for inviting me to speak. Welcome to my talk entitled, We Can't All Be Shaq. Today, we'll dive into why internet heroes need to pass the ball. First, I have a trigger warning. I created this slide deck well before I knew I was coming to Boston. There are pictures of Shaquille O'Neal in this presentation, but sadly, none in a Boston Celtics jersey. Also, this is a bit of a lighthearted talk and there are jokes in here. I will not be offended if you laugh. I will be equally unoffended if you don't laugh. With that being said, my name is Malcolm Preston. I've been in the technology world for most of my life since my father bought a Xerox personal computer when I was a child. And now I've dated myself. I've held many different titles over the years, but all heading generally towards the same outcome. My passion is to make complex systems work. Over the years, I've worked at small companies, large companies, small companies becoming large companies. This talk evolved from part of my personal journey around some of the tendencies I noticed over the years. Currently, I work at Fire Hydrant, where we envision a world where all software is reliable. Fire Hydrant operates in the incident management space, and reliable software lines up perfectly with my other passion for getting a good night's sleep. I often engage with our new sales and business-focused employees, and given my background, I help clarify why our product exists and the problem it attempts to solve. Those conversations have evolved into this talk. I will not focus on some technical product that we use or how we scale to accommodate a huge increase in customer traffic. Instead, this talk will focus on basketball. Now bear with me, I know this isn't the topic of most tech talks, but my hope is within a few minutes it'll become clear how basketball and incident management go together like copy and paste. Now I enjoy watching sports, not so much to root for a particular team, but I appreciate watching how teams adapt and work together, especially when they're facing adversity. I've often been intrigued over the years why certain companies seem better than others in various aspects of their operations, similar to sports teams. At a going away party from a job I was leaving a few years back, the VP of engineering told a story I didn't even remember, but I know subconsciously shaped how I viewed my role on the team. While sitting at a new hire orientation session toward the end of my very first day at the company, an issue arose with some internal system. With zero context, I pulled out my laptop, figured out what was going on, and helped fix the issue. After that, every time there was an incident, this VP said as soon as he saw my name in the Slack chat, he felt a sense of relief and knew we'd be okay. Now, my story isn't unique. In fact, most organizations I talk to have a handful of people or teams who swoop in and save the day when a technical crisis arises. When 2 a.m. outage page goes out, they're the first to respond. These nebulous heroes find the problem, determine the affected areas, fix the issue or know who to call to fix the issue, wake up the VP, draft messages to send to customers and other stakeholders, then create tickets to address why things went bad. The next day at 9 a.m., they go back to the job they were hired to do, their backs are padded, and life goes back to normal until the next 2 a.m. page. I like to equate these people to Shaq. Shaquille O'Neal stands 7 feet 1 inch tall and weighs well over 300 pounds. And now it is time for the uncomfortable interactive portion of this talk. Raise your hand if you know someone who's operated as a Shaq. All right? Now raise your hand if this has been you at one time or another. I have found my people. Any team Shaq played for knew if they desperately needed 2 points, they could pass the ball to Shaq, and a thunderous dunk was likely to follow. Why Shaq? Even if you don't follow basketball, you're probably aware of his cultural significance. If you had no idea who he was, and you were playing pickup basketball and this guy showed up, you certainly want him on your side. These incident response heroes aren't usually 7 feet tall, but when a moment arises when the team needs a quick victory, these people seem to always come through in the clutch. If you've been this person at your company, you know how good that can feel, but you also know how exhausting it can be. Why is this a problem? As individuals, we bring our talents every day with the goal of some kind of personal satisfaction. That satisfaction could be monetary compensation, pride in doing good work, helping the team, changing the world, or any other personal motivation. A team brings these groups of individuals together under some guidance with the goal of winning games while they're together. In sports, it could be a year or a season. In your company, that time frame could revolve around quarterly goals or longer-term projects. An organization continually sponsors teams with the goal of repeating success on a long-term basis. It's true, when you have individuals operating like Shaq, games are getting won, incidents are getting resolved, but are you truly setting up your organization for longer-term success by just doing it for them every time? The problem for a lot of organizations is Shaq makes dunking look easy. Incidents are being remediated, and nobody else is really feeling the pain. So much so that your company might not think there's a problem. And without the tools or headcount to make a sweeping change, it turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's not a great system in place, but you know what to do. So you just end up continuing to do it. This negates the need for a system and puts the onus back on you. Even as an individual contributor, there needs to be an understanding of what's best for the organization long term. It's also not realistic to ask other teammates to just do what Shaq does. While it may feel good to be a center of attention and a key contributor to success, establishing long-term, sustainable practices will help the organization in the future. I lied. I'm a liar. I'm pandering right now. But a small piece of trivia, I was living in Union Square in Somerville when the Celtics last won the championship. And the Patriots, and the Bruins, and the Red Sox, and the Revolution. You folks were so pleased with yourselves. You were. DevOpsDays Cleveland, I'm ready. Put me in the game, coach. I'd like to share another personal anecdote about the time I got a new observability tool adopted at a previous employer. It's an older meme, but it checks out. As a company, we became heavily invested in a self-hosting, a NoSQL database. It was very web scale. I had used that product in the past, quite a bit actually, and became one of the de facto resources when anything bad or puzzling happened that might be related to that database platform. At some point, I realized I had become a bottleneck in terms of support, and to be honest, I felt a little uncomfortable with the amount of stress that brought knowing I'd be integral in just about any issue possibly involving these database deployments, which had proliferated to just about every microservice that we created. I researched and advocated for a database monitoring and analysis tool that could help the rest of our team self-service and bring more reliability to the systems that they were responsible for. When I was met with skepticism around why we even needed a product like this, I realized no one else thought there was a problem to solve. And that was because every time there was an incident, Shaq. In a pre-COVID world, I often gleaned a lot of peripheral information around what other teams were doing just by happenstance. Someone might want to introduce a new infrastructure component they weren't familiar with and might ask for advice. Or I might hear about some upcoming change or challenge just from casual conversation. I would say the vast majority of the service dependency matrix in my head at past companies originated from water cooler talk. In a past era, it would have been through smoke break conversations. Unfortunately, in a post-COVID world, most of us are working in further siloed environments just because we rarely see our coworkers face to face. And in some cases, there's less communication outside of immediate work-related conversations. This facilitates the need to codify what incident responders do and who should be involved in various scenarios. One hero, knowing where all the bodies are buried, swooping in and saving the day is becoming less and less of a reality. Times change, technology changes, and platforms are becoming more and more complex. What worked in the past doesn't always work in the present or in the future. Perhaps your company's acquired 3 companies in the past 2 years, and I'm sure they're using the same cloud providers, languages, tools, and workflows. Maybe your Kubernetes clusters have over a dozen apps deployed. That's before you've even deployed your company's applications. Or is that just mine? Maybe you've embraced microservices so hard, you're squeezing its eyes out. SQL, NoSQL, all the SQLs, in-memory data stores, it's just a cache, I swear. Spoiler alert, it was not just a cache. This app uses Elasticsearch now? That's new. Serverless, it's running where? Service mesh, service catalog, service ownership, what are those? Times have changed and our heroes need to evolve. 2,880. The 2022 NBA Finals matched the Boston Celtics against the Golden State Warriors. Too soon? My apologies. The series went 6 games with a total of 2,880 minutes played between all players on both teams. Of those minutes, a grand total of 6 minutes were played by players over 7 feet tall. Shout it out if you know who that was. Anybody? Luke Cornett. Organizations need to adapt to a world where a 7-footer isn't a default response. Sometimes Shaq gets tired. Get him some water. Sometimes Shaq gets hurt. Burnout in our industry is a real thing. And let's be honest, sometimes Shaq isn't the easiest team member to get along with. Kobe. Let it breathe. All right, so where do we go from here? It's time to pass the ball. Now, I don't have a picture of Shaq here because in basketball, Shaq was a notorious black hole. The ball went in and never came out. I'm kidding. To get out of the cycle of heroism, you as an individual have to commit to changing the liability culture at your organization. I always recommend people start with a few small steps and then grow from there. First, if the contents of your company's service catalog, dependencies documentation, and incident management communication workflow are all in your head, you're in trouble. What happens when you're not around? Take the first step toward formalizing an incident management runbook. This doesn't have to look like setting aside a full day to write a step-by-step process. Instead, take the start small approach of talking to yourself during an incident. The next time you respond, start a thread in the incident channel where you're literally just thinking out loud. Be over-communicative and don't assume your teammates understand why you're taking the actions you are. Think in terms of, I just got paged. What's the first thing I do? Where are the places I look to check on the statuses of our services? How do I know who to call when I discover what service is down? How do I know how to revert the last deploy for that service? What impact does this have on our customers and internal teams? And what are my thoughts about fixing this issue going forward? These are all questions you're answering in your head in an organic way because you're the one that knows how to do it. By documenting your process, you're taking the first step toward getting that information out of your head and eventually into an incident management tool, company or company wiki, breaking that silo. I'd wager as an individual contributor, codifying what you do is equally, or if not more important than doing. Step 2, slow your roll. You know who looks up to Shaq? Everyone. And the same is probably true of you. Become an incident commander and give the other members of your team the opportunity to learn, to expand their own skills, and to bask in that hero's glow. A team benefits from players who have differing specialties and roles, all working together under sound coaching and organizational direction. The best responders facilitate communication and collaboration. So the next time an incident arises, instead of taking on the Shaq role, be a point guard or a coach. Managers, sometimes it's okay to sit Shaq on the bench. Simply hang back, provide assist and guidance. Give people the info they need, or better yet, help them figure out where to find it. And lend a hand when you're asked. Once you've done this a couple of times, maybe miss a game or two. See if not being on call is an option for the sake of your own health, but to also help others step up. Instead, work on a special project, like taking the initial efforts toward formalizing the documentation you created in the first step. There's no better way to flag a weakness up the chain of command than by demonstrating what happens when you're not there to fix things. And that's a surefire way to direct some resources toward incident management. Now, I'm not suggesting you let Shaq fiddle while Rome burns, but there are game day and incident scenarios where you can allow other team members to take the lead. Step 3, question the status quo. Let's talk about the big O's. On-call and observability. What does on-call look like at your company? Are you alerting on every down instance or only the ones that impact your customers, both internal and external? Related, are you using service level objectives? If not, what's standing in the way of adopting them? Depending on how noisy your alerting systems are, being on call for a week might be totally a reasonable amount of time. What observability tools are you using? Can other teammates easily find the relevant data they need to triage an incident? If they can't, spend some cycles exposing and training on how to get that information. Lastly, what tools are you using to manage your incidents? How are incidents declared and under what circumstances? Can your team easily figure out what to do next during a high-stress situation? Are you conducting retrospectives? And if so, how do they influence your product roadmaps? Why were any of these tools chosen? When and by whom? And do they fit the way your team works? We have to improve the on-call and incident response experience for our engineers in order to reduce burnout and retain our colleagues. We also want to be able to assemble a winning team even when the 7-foot, 1-inch star is unavailable. This will allow us to thrill our customers with the projects that directly impact revenue-producing products and features. Direct your hero energy to make the entire process better and not just remediating ad hoc incidents. These first steps are all moving toward a common goal, and that's to move away from whack-a-mole style incident response to more strategic and holistic incident management. If you're playing the hero role at your organization, you might be unintentionally masking the need for better incident management practices. This isn't your fault though, and you're not alone. By helping our companies shift toward a better incident management posture, we can improve things for our customers, for our teammates, and for ourselves. Again, my name is Malcolm Preston, and I'm with Fire Hydrant. Here is some contact information. I tweet nothing of significance, and my GitHub is pretty barren, but there it is. If you're curious about Fire Hydrant or incident management in general, come find me or one of my coworkers. There are a few of us around. Enjoy the rest of DevOpsDays Boston. I want to thank the organizers again for putting together this event, and thank you for listening.